Pat yourself on the back because you are right here, right now, for a reason. Welcome to the On Purpose podcast, where together we will empower ourselves and others to live lives with more passion and purpose. How you doing this morning, Jared?
Feeling great, man. It's summertime. It's hot as hell. I love it. I get up early, hear the birds chirping, the sun shining. I can't complain. How are you?
Good, man. I'm feeling back to myself again after some post vacation times and things like that. Feeling great, grateful.
I love it. It's this episode will be fun. I'm excited to get into the topic we've got for today. And before we do, though, how did you feel with reviewing Are Your Truths True and reflecting on that?
I feel good, man. I feel like that episode, Are Your Truths True, something that's going to stick with me here for several weeks of really challenging some ideas, really challenging things, constructs that I've created in my reality of believing this is true, this is the way to live, and really challenging some of those truths that I have been holding for a long time.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of a season I think we're going through just as society is wondering if anything's true anymore or doubting everything. And what I want to encourage people to do is don't just doubt everything everybody else tells you, but doubt what you tell yourself.
Yeah.
And question that. So that's what I've really been thinking is like every day when I'm journaling, kind of trying to find one thing that I believe and then either asking people about it or just, Googling it and seeing what's the contrast view and why do they believe that. And it's kind of interesting. It's interesting to really reflect on why do you believe what you believe.
Yeah.
And how did I get there and why is this belief stuck with me for this long? So we'll see. I think it's a good time to reflect. There are a lot of changes going on in the world. I think potentially there could be a lot of good changes that come out of everything, but it starts with us kind of going internal instead of just relying on all the external changes.
Definitely.
But we'll see, man.
We shall see. Always challenging truths. Today I'm really excited. Episode 74. How do we live our best life? And I think that's something, especially today, we're wondering, really, what's the best way to live, especially when we're being told to do so many things. Actually, Courtney, my girlfriend, yesterday was stopped by a police officer here in Fort Collins, walking around Old Town, walking the dog.
Dude, don't tell me.
He said, hey, because of the new state mandate, you're required to wear a mask anytime you are outside of your own residence. Just wanted to give you a heads up.
Yeah, that's
like,
so stupid.
Are you kidding me? So,
why are you going to start my episode with that story? Why are you going to start me on that?
Well, letting you know that it ties right into this is how do we live our best life, not only now, but always. However, especially now, because I'll tell you, with a lot of this quarantine stuff, with this mask stuff, a lot of people are having a hard time with not being able to see each other on a regular basis, have these events that we're used to, networking, a lot of these things. So I think it's a perfect time for us to discuss this.
But I think to discuss it, we also have to acknowledge what is a best life. And I think that's truly what's being challenged right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Okay.
Because just like what you just said, they're missing what? They're missing being able to see people. They're missing their freedoms. Mm-hmm. They're missing concerts. They're missing group activities.
Mm-hmm.
What are we not missing? We're not missing buying another car. We're not missing buying more shit that's hanging in our closet. Right? And I think this is a great time to examine what is your best life.
So let's talk about that for a second.
Or is it the people?
Let's talk about that for a second. What do you think your best life looks like, or best life is?
I think it's transitioned. It's transitioned, and Missy, she listens to the podcast every week, and I'm so thankful I get to go up to her property in Wyoming and disconnect. And right now, quite honestly, with all the noise and all just the chaos that goes on, my best life is when I'm up at her property just sitting and reflecting. And it's nothing but me and nature and some people that I love and peace. But that's come over time. You know, if you'd asked me in my 20s, back when I was your age, what was my best life? My best life was achieving, earning, providing, gathering, you know, the nice house, the nice car, right? That was my best life because, quite honestly, that's what I thought was supposed to be the best life, right? That's what my competition was doing. That's what everybody was angling for. As I've gotten older and we've gone through this experience with the quarantine and the mask and the not able to really connect with other humans because the fear, the mask, all that bullshit, I've realized that my best life is simple. It's peaceful. It's kind of like we talked about in the truth. When I go out to nature now, I find more truth in nature than I do being surrounded by all these artificial rules. And, you know, Courtney walking her dog should be a peaceful time, right? It's her and her dog's time to let him sniff, let him pee on stuff, like just enjoy that moment. But instead, they're told they have to be in a mask, even though there's nobody else around them.
Yeah, it's so dumb to me.
So for me, my best life is being around people I love and being in a place that we can do it peacefully.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, and the best life is going to be different for everyone, right? Like you said, it can be...
And it can be multiple things for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I think that's where sometimes, sorry to interrupt you, I just realized I interrupt you.
No, you're good.
That's why I think sometimes people get stuck. As they age, they get experiences, they move on in their maturity, but they're fixated on their best life was senior year of high school.
Yeah, and that's...
You know what I mean?
I have an experience that I want to talk a little bit about today that I think is exactly similar to that, is me kind of believing that in moments that maybe my best life is something that I thought it used to be, and I'm kind of growing out of that. So I want to get to that here in a little bit, but before that, I want to touch on that. That's exactly right. Like, my best life is not going to look like your best life or the next person's. It's going to be different for everyone, but I think what everyone can most likely agree to is that it's a life of balance, right? Like you've said in other episodes, things are seasonal. There may be times in our life where we're really feeling that need to be with people, to be around people that we love, events like Thanksgiving, family gatherings, all that stuff. There may be times in our life, seasonal times, where we really need that space. We really need that alone time. So life calls for many different types of moments, but I think that recently I've discovered that my best life is gonna need a lot of balance, and for me, that my true happiness, and I think for a lot of us, is progress, is learning, is growing, to where if I'm not progressing or learning in a certain aspect of my life, then I find myself kind of getting depressed, kind of getting down. There's only so much sitting on your ass, laying around, even sitting on the beach. Like, I was just at Cancun, and don't get me wrong, it was great. It was awesome. Spent a couple of days on all-inclusive resort, drink as whatever I want, as much as I want, eat whatever I want, as much as I want. But there comes a point to where I start kind of getting this anxiety and this bad feeling of I'm not progressing at anything. Yeah. So progress, I believe Tony Robbins says progress is happiness, and I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah, and I agree. I think we're very similar in that. And I would even take it a step further, and my wife can definitely tell you guys about this. If I am not learning, if I don't feel challenged in some area, I'm actually destructive to myself.
Yep.
I will actually do things to my own detriment out of, like, not, I don't want to say boredom, but just the depression that sets in, the fact that I don't feel purpose because I'm not learning anything.
Oh, man, that's so good. I'm so glad you used the word destructive, because what I want to share here about a recent experience is exactly that. So that makes me feel a little bit better and more confident sharing this experience that I recently had.
Dude, trust me. So, like, vacation, like, it drives Andrea nuts. We'll go, we had a property at Myrtle Beach for years, and we'd go there to visit. And literally all the other adults that are with us We get there, they want to organize the condo, they set up their chairs on the beach, they get their umbrella, they get a drink, first thing they do. And then there's me. And I literally get there, and I'm like pushing my kids and whatever other kids are near me out of the way to get my boogie board first to run in the ocean. And I literally be out there playing for like 4 hours with no drinks, no. And my wife's always just like, our ideas of vacation are so different. But that fulfills me, right? Like riding the waves. And then I'd always get these crazy comments from the other adults that are like my age that are just sitting there watching all the people play. And they're like, how do you keep doing it? And I'm like, because I never stopped. Mm-hmm. Like I always just kept playing. It was just part of that experience, because I'm like you. If you told me like, let's go to the beach, drink alcohol, eat bad food, and sit, I wouldn't go.
Yeah.
It sounds awful to me. Like the beach is nice, but the rest of it, like I know that's not going to fulfill me, kind of like you said. And then I'm going to come home and I'm going to be depressed because like I literally didn't do anything. Mm-hmm. I didn't learn. I didn't experience. And I think that's kind of where we're very common. And I think most of our community is experience. If you're doing something, you should be experiencing. Mm-hmm. Sitting numb, doing things you've already done, drinking, eating bad food, and laying in the sun, for a small minute, it's fine. Mm-hmm. But for like 3 or 4 days, I'm with you, man. I'd come back and be like, oh, that was awful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and here in the United States, we have this culture, right? The grind culture or the corporate culture, to where you work 50 weeks out of the year and then you got your 2 weeks vacation, right? To where we're kind of taught to really, like, in those 2 weeks, man, you gotta cherish it, you gotta live it up, because the 50 other weeks out of the year you're working so hard. So I think that we've kind of created this culture and mindset that, you know, you're working so long, so when you're vacationing, you really gotta pedal to the metal and take it to the max, and that's exactly what I did this recent time in Cancun. But at the same time, a lot of us are taught to live a certain way. For me, you know, I grew up with Catholicism and Islam in the household, and really the path of a devout Muslim, especially the praying the 5 times a day, the no drinking, the just everything that comes with being in Islam, especially growing up in the American culture, to me that didn't seem like the path that I want to live for so long, right? Of like, man, like I like drinking and having a good time, you know. I don't understand why like this praying 5 times a day, but that was kind of how I was taught is the best way to live this righteous path, worshiping God all the time, doing that on either side, right? Catholicism or Islam.
Sure.
So my question for you, Jared, because I know that you consider yourself more spiritual than religious, right? You've said before that you don't consider yourself a religious person. So growing up, how are you taught to live, and who taught you of like, hey, this is the way that you're supposed to live?
That's a good question. I think, honestly, you're mostly taught to live by what you're around and the people that are around you. Like, nobody ever sat me down. Like, unlike my family, we didn't have set, like, core beliefs. Like, we're Catholic or we're Muslim, and we're going to believe this, and everybody's going to believe it carte blanche. Honestly, I feel like I learned how I was going to live by the mistakes I made and the people that were around me and what I saw that I wanted out of life and what I didn't want. I had no real set rules. I can't remember anybody, but I think your initial people to teach you to live are your parents, right? Because you look up to them so much and you're around them so much and you kind of model your behavior after them. And then you get to a certain age in life and a certain stage where you're like, okay, I kind of like this about my parents, but I don't want to do that. Then you have coaches, teachers, mentors, people you're around. So for me, I would say most of my stuff was all external. Like I didn't have a guiding principle, if you will. Like we didn't sit and read the Bible or any other books I know some families are like, okay, we're going to go strictly by this. We never had that. So I would say just off experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And then based on your experience, are there certain things that you think are necessary for people to live their best life?
I would say moderation, man. I think to be your best means you're a little bit of everything. And even your stories that we'll get to here a little bit, I think when we're on the extremes, we set ourselves up for failure. Like, let's just take religion for it. Like, let's go Islam. Pray 5 times a day, no alcohol. How many people truly can do that every day? How many people do? Right? Like even Ramadan, right? Ramadan is a very strict fasting, suffering, but it's a temporary window. It's just designed to let you know you're capable, but it's not a sustainable way to live for most people. Like, there's a few, your higher level people that want to commit 100% to that can do that for sure. But for the majority of people, that's not going to work for the rest of their life. And I think for me, your best life is somewhere in the middle. It's not in full deprivation of everything you want in life all the time, but it's also not in giving yourself everything you think you should have in life. It's that middle ground. And I know I've struggled the most when I find myself on one extreme or the other, buying stuff that I shouldn't be buying because I don't either have the money or the need for it, or depriving myself of everything to try to reach a goal, and like fighting, for example. Fighting is a huge, if you think of a fight training, it's both extremes. It's deprivation of almost everything that's not fight related. Bad foods, partying, socializing. Like, you literally wake up, train, recover, train. Think about your next workout, my meal, my next workout. But then it's also excessive, right? And then it's all workouts. It's all physical. It's all mental training for fight. So that's kind of why I think when we come out fights, like I was talking, I think the last episode, you're almost depressed. Mm-hmm. Why is that? Because you've not been in the middle at all. You haven't had some social relationships, but not too much. You haven't had some bad food, but not too much. You've been extremed.
Right.
And for me, when I find myself in the extremes, I usually have a crash afterwards until I can get back to my middle ground. And that's where I'm my most efficient, I'm my most effective, is when I allow myself to be in the middle. Like, I can have some food that's maybe not so good for me, and then I can exercise. Mm-hmm. But I don't have to, be on some crazy diet where I only get this many calories and this many, like, that just doesn't work for me. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I truly think if you look at our world right now, where's some of the danger is that there's very few people. We're not in the middle. Like, the power brokers, our politicians, whatever, they're extremes on both ends. Mm-hmm. And I think anytime we live on extremes, there's short-term, like, wow factor, but then it's not sustainable. Like, that middle ground is our best life, at least for me.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that's a good segue for me to share with you guys on Purpose Community, kind of my recent experience that over the past couple days, I've carried a little bit of like, man, what the hell was I thinking? A little bit of shame around, not super proud, but I definitely went on the other end of the extreme, So I was preparing, as a lot of you know, for my fight. Before that, I had 75 hard, which was more like 100-something hard because I had failed. And, so I was just letting Jared know that I realized that this year, 2020, was the longest stint since I've started drinking alcohol in my life. That I've 6 months, not a drop of alcohol, right? And I was like, wow, really thinking about that, how alcohol has so been ingrained in my life of, happy hour here, hanging out with the boys here, you go to a networking event there. And I was on that end of the extreme and then preparing for the fight, right? COVID, no socialization, nothing. So after the fight, I was on this high, had an amazing fight, first round TKO, my dream finish, what I had visualized. Was so excited. Then I booked this all-inclusive resort vacation in Cancun, and for, like Jared was saying, the pinnacle of having a great time for me for a while in my 20s was getting hammered drunk with my friends, right? Of like, that's the best. We're taking shots. We're having a great time, right? In my head, like, that was the kind of the pinnacle of having a great time. So when I got there, I was Andrea style. First thing, let's get some drinks. Boom, where the shots at? Tequila, let's go. And And don't get me wrong, we had a great time. And we were still doing stuff. We were doing the little salsa classes, even though I was like drunk doing them, sweating my ass off, doing the classes, did the little aqua bike class. Had a great eating my ass off. I mean, I ate so much food, man, because I'd been dieting. So I had a great time there. But the thing is, when I got back, it didn't stop. I was kind of like, we got back on a Sunday. Didn't drink Sunday, but I told Courtney, my girlfriend's getting ready to move in, so I kind of had this anxiety too about that, of like, oh, I'm gonna be losing my personal space, and just kind of thinking of all the negatives about that. So then Monday night I decided to drink by myself, right, which is something I never really do. And same thing Tuesday night, drinking. Then I'm like, oh, I'm going to get back. I was going to plan to go to team. Nah, I'm going to drink instead. Order some Chinese food. I think the night before I ordered some pizza. Just really going hard in it. And then I think I have shared before that last year I was kind of back and forth on cigarettes. Haven't smoked, I don't think, all 2020. We ain't got a pack of cigarettes. Being destructive, literally destructive to myself. And I'm analyzing all this, I'm drinking, I'm eating shitty, cigarettes, all this stuff. And then honestly, I'm thinking, oh, my girlfriend's going to be moving in. I'm not going to be able to watch porn ever, and that's something that I kind of always try to refrain and abstain from too. Start watching some porn, just having like this low vibrational activity. All of these things that are not things that I really indulge in often in my life, that I'm just like going all in. And then after it, I find myself in this kind of state of just, really being down. And it took finally coming, going to a practice, hitting a run, changing up my diet, eating well again, to where I started to feel good again. But it was funny. It was kind of like I was chasing these feelings of pleasure, of feeling good, after I had worked so hard to do this. And then I just went on the other end of the extreme for a few days, for about a week, honestly, because of the Cancun, and then come back in a few days that week. So it was really interesting to analyze. And what I learned from the experience is that, again, kind of going back to progress being happiness, and then that disciplined lifestyle is truly what keeps me feeling good, and that feeling of well-being every day. And again, like you said, that moderation. So that was kind of something I wanted to share, because it was interesting just how, I had been on this really disciplined path, and so much good came out of that. But then as soon as I allowed myself, I took a little overboard on the indulging, and then was quickly able to see, like, this sucks. Like, I do not like how I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, and I think that's not uncommon, but I think what happens to a lot of people is they don't recognize it. And then it becomes a pattern, right? And the best analogy or experience I have with that is the person that goes on a very strict diet and loses a ton of weight. And then within a year, right, they get off the diet because they met their goal weight, so now they think they get some freedoms back. They vary off the program. And then within a year, where are they at? Same weight they started, because they didn't change the habits that kept them from getting there. They just were a part of a system. And I think for us, one of the goals is you don't have to be extreme all the time. But there's that fine place in the middle where you can have a drink or two, but not lose productivity, right? And that's what I struggled with in my 20s, was especially with alcohol, is like, I think it's a common thing, right? If there's drinks, like, you're not just drinking a drink, you're drinking until it's all gone, and then you gotta go get more. And you're now where I'm at, I'm like, hey, you can have a beer or two, and then you're done. You go on, and I think that's kind of the microcosm of life, right? Like, from one extreme to another extreme, there's probably not true happiness in living either extreme life for most people, right? Most people don't want to be extremely disciplined all the time, 2 workouts a day, a gallon, right? Is that sustainable for some, but not for most? But putting ourselves in the middle, right? And what I mean, and not just physical health, because we're talking a lot about physical health, but let's talk about mental health, right? Like, putting ourselves in the middle where we're still challenging our thoughts, we're still learning, but we kind of know what we believe. And we're critically thinking. We're not being swayed by one extreme story over here or one extreme story over there. We're in that middle, seeking our own truths and seeking our own best life, which includes information. Mm-hmm. It includes knowledge. And, being around you as much as I am, the one thing I know is if you're not learning, you're definitely not happy. Like almost every day I see you, you tell me about what were you talking about before the show today? Some guy that talks to his water and loves his water. And like when you tell that story, you're like, you're full of life. Uh-huh. But if I come in here and you haven't learned anything in a couple of days, or you've just been doing emails for the business, it's a completely different energy. Mm. You know what I mean? And I think that's what's cool about being around people, and hopefully what we get back to with our best life is when we're around people, we actually embrace people. We learn from people. We can sense, Lee hasn't learned anything in a couple of days. He's a little more melancholy, a little quieter. Mm-hmm. Or Jared hasn't been reading or doing what he has because he come in, he's kind of like, mopey. You know what I mean? Like, we pay attention to that.
Right.
Because I truly think for most people, our best life involves other people.
100%.
And you know 100%. What? When other people actually pay enough attention to care about you and to recognize, hey man, all these seems down. Maybe I should share with him something I learned. Mm. Well, if I share with you what I learned, guess what you just did? You learned.
Yeah.
And now you get picked up, even though but that's where I've progressed to as far as my best life. I don't need more things. I want less things. I want more good people.
Yeah.
And I want people like you that care about me. And when I come in, you're paying attention, like, oh man, this is off, or it feels good here. That truly to me is when we can all live our best life.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I've said it before and I'll say it again. There's a reason why the worst punishment upon a human being is solitary confinement. Because we all need people to be happy.
People, but let's even go further. And let's go with purposeful people. I don't need 8,000 friends that don't give two shits about me, that like everything on Instagram and heart me, right? But when I see them in person, they don't take time to notice I'm off today. Mm-hmm. Right? What was that episode we did? Shit, it was one of our very first ones. I think, you good or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? When people are like, I'm good, and you're like, you're not really good. What's going on?
Right.
We need people like that.
Yeah.
That less numbers and more quality.
Mm-hmm. And that comes back to really knowing yourself in order to know others, right? So I like to think of examples. I want to play the little devil's advocate on the extremes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm reading a book called The Autobiography of a Yogi.
Yoga person?
Yeah. And his I forget his first name. His last name's Yogananda. He's a huge influence and someone who brought a lot of yogic practices to the Western world. Like he was around like 1920s, 1930s. Wow. Yeah. And it's pretty amazing to hear some of the stories because a lot of people in India, I want to go to India badly, man. It's a very mystical place, and they're not, even the Hindu religion, it's not like the Christians or the Muslims that, trying to get you to follow their religion. They kind of do their own thing over there. But back then, there's a lot of masters who do these mystical things. I mean, insane stuff. Like there's a story about they were hunting this robber, and this guy, they're calling this guy who they think is the murderer robber guy. The police are like, hey, stop. This guy's not stopping. The police bring an axe, chop his arm off. The guy doesn't even react. They come in front of him, and he's like, I'm not the murderer you're looking for. They realize he's like this spiritual master. Like, oh, I'm so sorry, blah, blah. He's like, hey, don't worry. Plugs his arm into a tree. He says, Mother Earth is going to heal me. Tells him, come back in 3 days so you won't feel guilt. I know you guys feel so guilty for getting the wrong guy. Come back in 3 days. His arm is better, right? And they have so many stories like this throughout India. And it may be hard to believe, but there's a lot of these stories and evidence that some of these are true. So a lot of people in India, because of stories like this, they want to go on this path of what we would call pretty extreme. You know, and when I have these conversations with Courtney, I tell her, like, you know, that's not a path that I would want. Like that guy I was telling you, Ram Dass, the Harvard professor, he went over there, and his day is like 6 hours of meditating every day, you know, being really still. They're vegetarians. They're you want to talk about simple life, super simple life, but that's the journey of life that they want. I also think about someone like Bill Gates. I watched his documentary on Netflix and talk about how he thinks that developing the body, being fit, is kind of a waste of time. He looks at it like we're in this meat suit, but 25% of everything is in the brain. So he's always developing his mind. He's always reading. He's always on the computer. He maybe plays tennis like once a month, but the dude doesn't really value health, physical health, physical fitness.
Crazy.
Right. Which is interesting, but that's his way. So I think it's really important to realize like what's best for you. You know, if what's going to make you happy is to have that extreme life of a very religious person, or the path of a yogi, awesome. Or if, you know, you're like Bill Gates, someone who just wants to develop the mind and doesn't really care about the body, or vice versa. Maybe you're a bodybuilder, you know, you don't care about learning things as much as you do learning about the body and building the body. I think it's important to really look inward and find out what makes you happy, right? Because for me, if you told me that, hey, this is the way to live, Bill Gates style, right? Like, don't worry, I would be so unhappy because I've always been very connected to my physical body, right? And have always really enjoyed using it and being physically strong and things like this.
But I think you just said it best, man. Nobody can tell you what's the best way for you to live.
Right.
And I think that's where unhappiness comes from, is when we're trying to live according to what we think we're supposed to from everybody else. Mm-hmm. Right? The social media craze, the collection of things craze because your neighbor has it, you got to do one better. Your best life truly comes from within. And for me, being on extremes at either end or very short term, I can stay there for a while, but I'm not going to be super happy. When I'm in the middle, I'm much happier. I'm able to do the things I enjoy. That could be different for somebody else that maybe has extremely addictive personality traits and alcohol and drug, like that controls their life. Maybe they like living on an extreme, but they got to get to the other extreme where it's maybe extreme meditation and monk-like and going to India and removing all temptations to, you know what I mean? Maybe that does work for them. Mm-hmm. But I think that's the key, is your best life is not dictated by anybody else other than you. Mm-hmm. But you got to know what it is. And how do you get there? Through mistakes, through experiences, trying things yourself.
That was my next question for you, is how do we get there?
You got to live.
Experiences and mistakes. Yeah.
You got to, right? And think about it. When we went on this quarantine, one of the common things I heard people say was like, oh, just relax and watch Netflix. Just sit back and binge. What are you doing? You're watching a media presentation of all these other ways life can be lived. Mm-hmm. And too many people watch TV and they take that experience that they saw in make-believe and they think that's their experience instead of going out and doing it themselves. Right? Like, you know, people are always like, Jared, do you watch football this Sunday? No, I didn't watch football. Well, why wouldn't you watch? Dude, it's 3 hours I could be doing something. Right? Like, think about it. Like, I'm literally going to sit and watch grown men have an experience, or I could go out and experience something myself. Now, I'm not saying that I'm against football, but I can catch the highlights in 10 minutes and catch all the big plays.
Yeah.
But in those 3 hours, I experienced. So that's, to me, where your best life is mistakes and experiences.
Right.
And too many people get caught up watching other people's best lives or perceived best lives, and then they get sad, they get depressed because their best life doesn't look like that. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? That's make-believe. That their best life probably isn't that either. Mm-hmm. But why are we comparing? And I think that's the other danger for truly living your best life, is quit comparing yours to everybody else's. Yours is yours.
Yeah.
and it's not supposed to be everybody else's because you're unique.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I love that. And I will say for the football watchers out there that, watching a game of football, you can make that an experience, right? I mean, some tailgates, some Super Bowl parties, when you're around people you love and things like that, you can create that as an experience. However, you need to be aware of, if you're the type of person who catches every game for your team, watches every game in the playoffs, that's a lot of time that you're putting into generally the same exact experience, to where that's not really experiencing different things in life. To where I think you're absolutely right is you do these things and you learn and you grow from them. Like, I walked into Trials MMA 3 years ago.
Crazy.
And I had this dream of, like, I'm going to do an MMA fight one day. I'm going to become a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt one day, all these things. And I actually had to go through those experiences and put in the time to really know what it was going to feel like, right? I always had this idea of what it would feel like to be in a cage, to fight. But until I actually go through that, it's just an idea. So I think you're right, Jared. We find out how we live our best life while attempting to always live it, but being open-minded to experiences, not being afraid to make mistakes, talking about them when you do, and growing from them.
Yeah, and I think it's not a passive activity. Life should not be passive. It's an active activity, right? That means we have to be going. We have to be trying. We have to be doing different things, surrounding ourselves with different people, learning things. That's always been my biggest fear, is that I quit learning and that I just plateau, and that I look back and I start telling stories about, well, when I was, this age, I was this person, instead of being like, yeah, when I was there, I did that and I learned from it. And now I'm better here. Like, we should always be making ourselves better. And the only way to make yourself better is to go internal, right? Not external, not depend on everybody else to make you better, but really know what it is you want. Like we talked about that with Otterbox. What is it you really want? Know that.
Right.
And then you can start to build upon it. And I just believe, man, our best days are still ahead of us if we choose them. But nobody's going to do it for you, right? Like I can't possibly make you live your best life. I can support you. I can love you. I can tell you what you're capable of. I can do the things that, if you follow, will help you. But you got to take that step. And I think too many times we're a society of convenience and ease, and we want the magic diet pill. We want the magic no workout fitness plan. We want the knowledge of, a 10-minute video about a 5,000-page book instead of reading the book. You know what I mean? Like your best life is in the process.
Exactly. And it's crazy because a lot of the time we don't even realize that that's not going to make us happy. If we get that diet pill and get there, it's
because you didn't earn it.
It's all in the process.
Exactly.
It's kind of like beating a video game, right? I remember one of the most popular games in the world was Pokemon. Yeah. And they had the red version and the yellow version and all these different versions. And I remember as a kid, I always wanted to beat that game. And you can still play once you've gotten all 8 badges and you've beaten the Elite Four. You can still play, and your Pokemon are strong as fuck and can beat all the other Pokemon, and it's awesome. But then after you win everything, it's just, you don't really enjoy it anymore. Yeah. You enjoyed that process of leveling up, trying to beat that next gym, and I've always kind of used that analogy with life of, like, it was the most fun when you're leveling up, when you're going through that process. And then after you get there and you have the strongest Pokemon and you're the Elite Four champion and all this stuff, you're kind of just like, I'm done with this.
No challenge.
I don't really want to play it anymore. So I can imagine if someone gives you Pokemon and you have the cheat code to get there, you're not even going to enjoy the game. It's going to be a shitty game. You're not going to like it. And I like that analogy with life all the time, because I've found in my life too that's what it is. If I had gone into Trials 2017 and fast forward to my debut, that would have sucked. So yeah.
That's because that's where all the memories are.
Yep.
Right? All the memories, all the learning moments are in the process, not the actual outcome. And that's, that's going back earlier. You had mentioned the grind culture and that we work 50 weeks to have a 2-week vacation. And I would even take it a step further. Most people work 5 days to get 2 days off.
Mm-hmm.
And they, you talk to somebody like, how you doing? Oh, it's Monday. Oh, it's Tuesday. Oh man, it's Thursday. We're almost to the weekend. And what a defeatist mentality that is, that you're literally willing to go through the motions 5 out of 7 days to enjoy 2 days. And you're going to do that for 20, 30 years of your life. Like, enjoy those days, because whatever problem a Monday brings is an opportunity to grow and to learn.
Yeah. And
that's what you celebrate on the weekend. If you just go through the motions all week, what are you celebrating? Mediocrity? Perseverance? Like you just kept showing up. Like, that's showing up is important, but sometimes so is productivity and actually doing things that you're proud of. And that's, for me, this whole episode, like my best life, what I've found and what I've come to learn is in moments. My best life is not big events. It's not gigantic milestones anymore, which I used to think. It's literally in small moments. Because this is a moment. This is it. This is it. When we're done recording today, we will never get this period of time back. So if I enjoy this, if I give and I learn and I receive, that's the best moment. That's my best life for now. And then I leave here and I go make another best moment. And then, right, if I stop and think about my moments, it just puts a lot of things in perspective. And you truly realize the importance of already how much abundance you already have, mm-hmm. instead of always looking to the next thing.
Yeah, because all we have is right now. And then,
dude, I could walk out of here and get hit by a car.
Yeah.
Or somebody without a mask could cough on me. I could fall dead, apparently. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible. And how much, like for me, how much of my life did I spend wanting to acquire things? And there's nothing wrong about things. Trust me, community. I'm comfortable. I have a house. I have a car. Like, I'm comfortable.
Airstream.
I have an Airstream. I'm comfortable. But I don't need more. What I truly miss is time with you and time with my kids, and being out in nature to where I can just really appreciate everything that's around me. And I would encourage our community to quit looking always to the next thing and the next. And I talked about this at the gym the other day. If every drill we do, you're looking at the clock, wishing that clock would be over, it's going to be over quick, and you're not going to get much out of it. And I think sometimes we do that with life, right? Like, it's Monday and we're just looking at the clock waiting for Friday. Mm-hmm. And then it's, Sunday and we're dreading the clock going to Monday. And we spend so much time always looking ahead that we're missing all the moments. And the next thing you know, you're on fast forward and you're at the end of your life. And you missed a lot of time to really live your best life, which is moments.
Yeah. Yeah, and we can always get back to that. After my little indulgence destructive period, I found myself being here at work and having a really hard time getting motivated, getting going, looking at the clock, when am I going to be able to get out of here, kind of thing. And it really goes back to, for me, gratitude, right? Really looking and really taking a moment. And I fell off of that, even though I'm always talking dad-grat, always preaching it. Fell off of that for a couple of days, and I could notice, right, when I think that's one of the most essential elements of living your best life, is always taking a moment for what you can be grateful for. Yeah. Because no matter where you're at in life, no matter what your circumstances are, we have something to be grateful for. Even the ability to draw a breath, right? That's something right there. So before we close out, Jared, I just kind of wanted to recap for our listeners on what we talked about are the essential elements of living your best life. One of them I will say is practicing gratitude, and that's something that I am and will continue to dedicate a lot of my energy in my entire life for, is trying to inspire and cultivate people to practice DAGRAT, daily actions towards gratitude, whatever that means to you. Could be a journal, could be vocalizing, whatever. So gratitude, I think is an essential element.
Yeah, it just makes you appreciate what you already have instead of looking for what you want.
Exactly. And then you had mentioned experiences.
Yeah.
Right? taking experiences, being open-minded to experience things, even if you're not sure that you're going to love it, trying new things.
Experiences doesn't mean experience something you're good at. You can fail at something. You can not be good at something. That's still a good experience because you're going to learn something from it.
Relationships. Spend time with people you love, people who love you. Meet new people. Yeah. Right? People's relationships are huge.
Yeah, and that's what, most people have said during this whole time is they're missing is just being able to see people, and that's why a lot of people don't adhere to the mask policy is it makes you not as human if we can only see your eyes.
Mm-hmm. And then another thing I wanted to put on here is discipline. Doing hard shit every day, whether that's a workout, a cold shower, you're trying to start meditating. That could be hard for some people.
People don't like reading.
Healthy eating.
Do something that's not convenient. You know what I mean? Like, it's so much easier to just turn on a TV and sit in a recliner and stare at other people versus, maybe picking up the book and reading and then highlighting and reflecting on what you read and how it applies to your life. And then I would just encourage you, man, your best life is going to be in the moments from day to day, not going for 50 weeks to get to a 2-week vacation that you think is going to create these magical moments, because there'll be some, but those other 50 weeks had some milestones, kids' birthdays, the tooth fairy, anniversaries, think about all the stuff we miss.
Right.
Or we rush through to get to the next thing, and just slow it down.
Right, yeah.
I think if there's one good thing that came out of our current situation is that it kind of did slow time down because it forced isolation. It forced you to just sit around, which meant the days seemed longer. But it also showed us that we're capable of slowing our own lives down if we choose.
Amen. Yeah, we can choose joy in each moment. We have the power to choose. One of the most powerful powers on the planet is the power to choose. So we have that potential to choose how we want each moment to be. So love it. Gratitude, living experiences, cultivating relationships, discipline, choosing happiness, being in the moment.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Perfect. We got some practice for him, Mr. Ali.
Yeah. So the practice for this week, guys, is to kind of go through the episode and reflect on your journey. Part 1 is reflect and write down who are the people in your life who told or showed you how to live. Part 2 is how do you believe you should live and why do you believe this? And then 3 is reflect on, are you living the life you believe you should live? Why or why not? And then email your practice to onpurpose.official@gmail.com.
All right, team, as we wrap up another episode of the On Purpose podcast, we are thankful for having you all on our journey. We want to announce new ways to include you and let you go deeper into our community. First off, we got the onpurposepodcast.com website where you can subscribe to our monthly newsletter, get inside tips, and see what's coming up in the upcoming months. As well as our new launch is our Patreon account. We have 5 tiers where you can decide at what level you want to contribute to the podcast and the community, help support us, continue to push us forward and grow. And it's as little as 50 cents an episode or $2 a month, all the way up to $50 a month, depending on where you want to be. Perks of this are sneak peek episodes. You get the episodes quicker. You get to contribute on episodes. You get monthly Q&As with Ali and I and special guests. And you get to be a building block for our community as we continue to grow worldwide. With the release of Shelly Davies' episode, we are now international. And we're excited for the future leads us. So please fit in with us wherever you are comfortable. And remember, team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We'll see you next week.